For thousands of years, the galaxy lived under a quiet, uneasy peace. Countless alien races filled the endless stars, each with their own worlds, cultures, and pride. They traded, argued, and sometimes fought. But in the end, most of them followed the same old rule: avoid war at any cost. The older and more powerful civilizations remembered the great wars that once destroyed entire systems. They had seen planets burned to ash and species wiped out of existence, so they built fragile alliances and endless treaties, all to make sure such wars never returned again. Among these mighty empires were the Thalkar, a proud reptilian race known for their vast fleets, and the Velari, ancient beings who ruled with knowledge and technology older than most stars. They believed themselves to be the rightful rulers of the galaxy, the keepers of peace. But peace as they knew it was built on fear and arrogance. The strong ruled and the weak obeyed. In this grand web of power, one small and young species barely received attention: humanity. Humans were considered newcomers to the stars, explorers from a small blue planet orbiting an average sun. Many alien scholars laughed when they first heard of Earth. They called it a primitive world, too emotional and too unpredictable to ever survive among the great civilizations. To them, humanity was just a passing spark, a species that would either destroy itself or fade into obscurity. But the truth was different. Humanity had something that most of the galaxy had long forgotten. They had curiosity, courage, and an unbreakable will to survive. In only a few centuries, humans had gone from launching crude rockets to building mighty colonies among distant stars. They had crossed deadly radiation belts, fought their own wars, rebuilt their cities, and reached further than anyone thought possible. While the ancient races of the galaxy stayed comfortable in their power, humanity was busy learning, growing, and pushing forward faster than any species before them. Still, to the great powers, humans were just background noise. The Thalkar dismissed them as restless dreamers. The Velari saw them as children playing with dangerous toys. No one paid attention to the quiet hum of their factories, or the new warships leaving their shipyards near Mars. No one cared about the new type of fusion engine that allowed human ships to travel faster and farther than ever before. The galaxy had seen thousands of species rise and fall. Why should humans be any different? But whispers began to spread across the trade routes. Merchants told stories of human ships seen far from their colonies, mapping uncharted regions, helping weaker species, and fighting pirates that even galactic law enforcement ignored. A few alien captains claimed they had seen human vessels destroy raiders twice their size, not with superior technology, but with daring and unpredictable tactics. Rumors grew stronger with each passing year. Some said the humans were building something massive beyond the edge of known space. Others claimed they were training armies, preparing for a threat that no one else could see. Yet even then, the galaxy didn't take them seriously. The ruling powers had grown lazy. They had forgotten what true conflict felt like. They believed that no young race could ever match the might of their fleets or the wisdom of their councils. To them, humans were small and loud, a species too emotional to ever hold power. But among the stars, change was coming. Humanity was not just growing stronger, it was becoming united. After centuries of division on Earth, the nations of mankind had finally learned to work together. Under one banner, the Earth Alliance, they pooled their knowledge, technology, and dreams. They looked not just to survive in space, but to thrive in it. The human colonies on Mars, Luna, and the outer moons became cities of light and steel, linked by fleets of fast, powerful ships. New academies trained officers and engineers for a future where humans would stand equal among the stars. Still, they didn't seek war. They only wanted their place among the stars, a seat at the galactic table. Humanity had lost too much in its own history to crave conquest. But if the galaxy had been watching closely, it would have seen something different in humanity's eyes. It wasn't greed. It wasn't fear. It was determination, the kind that burns brightest in darkness. And then one day, that quiet determination was tested. On a cold morning aboard a Thalkar trading vessel, a crew picked up a strange signal from deep space. It was short and simple, but it carried a sense of urgency. It came from a distant human colony at the edge of known space, a call for help. Something had attacked them, something powerful enough to make even seasoned captains uneasy. The message spread from ship to ship, station to station, until it reached the heart of the galaxy. The great powers watched silently. None of them offered aid. They told themselves it wasn't their problem. After all, it was just a small colony, just humans. The galaxy had seen thousands of such incidents before. Worlds were destroyed, rebuilt, and forgotten every day. But something about this one felt different. The message didn't just ask for help, it carried a warning. And while most ignored it, a few listened. They spoke in quiet corners, saying, "The humans are in trouble." Others replied, "Let them learn their lesson." But none of them realized that this single event would change everything they thought they knew about humanity, and about war itself. Back on Earth, the signal reached the Alliance Command. Leaders and admirals gathered, their faces lit by the blue glow of holographic maps. The colony's distress call was faint, but it was real. There was silence in the room for a long moment. Then a single question was asked, one that would echo through history. Do we answer? Humanity's leaders knew the risks. The enemy was unknown. The galaxy was vast. And stepping into another race's conflict could bring the wrath of powers far beyond human understanding. But they also knew something else. Silence would mean surrendering their soul. For generations, humanity had defined itself by one truth. They never turned away from those in need. They had fought famine, disease, and war, not just for themselves, but for each other. And now, standing among the stars, they faced the same choice again. As debates raged on Earth and Mars, ordinary people began to talk about the colony. Families prayed, engineers worked overtime, and soldiers prepared without orders. The spirit of humanity, the same spirit that had carried them from the oceans to the stars, was waking up again. In the quiet before the storm, the galaxy continued its endless routines. The powerful empires still laughed. The merchants still traded. The diplomats still argued. But somewhere deep in the cold void, a new force was stirring. The humans were watching, listening, waiting. No one in the galaxy realized that this silence, the calm before the first human fleet launched into war, was not weakness. It was focus. It was preparation. Because when the storm came, when the humans finally decided to act, the galaxy would remember that moment forever. The day would come when the laughter of the old races turned to fear. The day when the stars themselves would tremble, not because of power or technology, but because of the unbreakable will of one young species. And as the human ships prepared to rise, carrying millions of brave souls into the unknown, the galaxy slept, unaware of what was about to awaken among them. It began on a quiet world called Veteran Prime, a green planet covered in shining oceans and silver cities. It was a place where different alien races lived together in peace. Farmers grew food in floating gardens, children played under two suns, and trade ships came and went from its busy spaceports. For many years, Veteran Prime was called the Jewel of the Outer Rim, a symbol of unity and hope in a galaxy that often forgot the meaning of both. But peace is fragile, and one dark morning that peace was shattered forever. Without warning, a fleet of warships appeared in the skies above the planet. They belonged to the Kareth Dominion, a brutal empire known for conquering worlds and enslaving their people. The Kareth were a proud and cruel species, tall, armored, and merciless. They believed only the strong had the right to rule. And now they had decided that Veteran Prime, with its wealth and strategic location, should belong to them. The attack came fast and without mercy. The skies turned red as orbital bombardments rained down. Cities burned and millions ran for shelter that didn't exist. The local defense fleets tried to fight, but they were small, unprepared, and hopelessly outgunned. Within hours, communication towers were destroyed and entire regions went silent. The Kareth commander sent a message to the planet's council: surrender or be erased from the stars. Veteran Prime sent out a desperate distress call, a cry for help that traveled through the endless dark. "To anyone who can hear this," said the voice of Governor Lyra, trembling but defiant, "our world is under attack. We are being slaughtered. Please, if there is anyone out there, help us." The message reached many worlds, carried by the Galactic Network. But as it spread, it was met mostly with silence. The great powers of the galaxy, those who had promised to defend peace, did nothing. The Thalkar debated endlessly in their council chambers. The Velari claimed the conflict was too far from their territory. Others simply turned their ships away, afraid to anger the Kareth. In the end, the message reached only one place where it truly mattered: Earth. In the Earth Alliance Command Center, deep beneath the surface of New Geneva, the signal played in a dimly lit room. The faces of admirals, generals, and ministers reflected the blue glow of the holographic display. For a long time, no one spoke. The sounds of the dying colony filled the silence. Explosions, screams, and the voice of Governor Lyra fading into static. Finally, one of the council members whispered, "It's not our fight." Another said, "If we intervene, the Kareth will come for us next." A scientist argued, "We're not ready for a galactic war." The room filled with fear and hesitation. For centuries, humanity had built itself back from wars and near extinction. Now, for the first time, they faced the question of whether to risk everything again, not for themselves, but for strangers. Then Admiral Elias Grant stood up. He was an old man with gray hair and calm eyes that carried the weight of 100 battles. He had seen humanity's darkest days and its brightest victories. When he spoke, the room fell silent. "If we turn away from this," he said, "then we are no better than those who stand by while others suffer. We were born on a world that taught us to fight for survival, but survival without honor means nothing. If we let this stand, the galaxy will know us only by our silence." Those words echoed through the room. Grant wasn't just speaking to the council. He was speaking to all of humanity. For the next several hours, Earth's leaders argued. They calculated risks, weighed losses, and discussed consequences. But deep down, they all knew the truth. Humanity couldn't ignore that call for help. It was in their nature to protect, to resist oppression, to fight for the weak. That spirit had carried them from the ruins of their past into the stars, and now it was calling again. A decision was made. The Earth Alliance would respond. Messages were sent to the outer colonies. Fleets were ordered to prepare for deployment. Engineers worked around the clock, loading weapons, fuel, and supplies. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled was being born in silence. They called it Operation Dawnshield. It would consist of 327 warships, dreadnoughts, carriers, cruisers, and fast assault vessels, along with thousands of pilots and soldiers from across the colonies. The announcement spread like wildfire. News broadcasts showed images of massive ships leaving their docks, shining under the light of distant suns. People across Earth, Mars, and the moons watched with pride and fear. Some wept. Others cheered. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't fighting for itself. It was fighting for the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the Kareth war camps on Vetran Prime, the conquerors celebrated their victory. The cities were silent now. Smoke covered the skies. They believed the galaxy had already forgotten this small, helpless world. The Kareth commander laughed when his sensors picked up a fleet approaching. "Let them come," he growled. "No one dares challenge the Dominion." But he was wrong. The human fleet traveled through the void, their engines glowing blue against the blackness of space. Inside the flagship Sol's Endeavor, Admiral Grant stood at the main viewport, watching the stars drift by. He thought of Earth, the oceans, the cities, the people who had sent them into this unknown war. Around him, officers worked in silence, each one aware that they were about to make history. Hours turned into days. The fleet approached the Vatran system, and the first enemy signatures appeared on the scanners. Hundreds of Kareth ships blocked the way, forming a massive wall of steel and fire. Humanity had never faced anything like it before. Some young officers felt fear tightening in their chests. Others whispered silent prayers. Then Admiral Grant spoke over the intercom, his voice calm but firm. "We are not here to conquer. We are here to defend. The galaxy has forgotten what it means to stand for what's right. Let them remember. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We fight for the innocent. We fight because it is who we are." Every ship received the message. Every soldier heard his words. And in that moment, fear turned into courage. The human fleet accelerated, engines roaring like thunder across the void. The Kareth commander watched in disbelief as the human formation advanced with perfect precision. They did not retreat, did not scatter. They moved like one living force. "Primitive apes," he sneered. "Destroy them." Missiles, plasma bolts, and energy beams filled the blackness of space. The first battle between humanity and the Kareth had begun. From the surface of Vatran Prime, survivors looked up and saw the sky burning with light. Some thought it was the end. Others realized it was hope. For the first time in weeks, they saw ships fighting back. They didn't know who they were, but they felt it in their hearts. Someone had come to help. The galaxy watched in silence. Communication channels buzzed with disbelief. Humans, the alien admirals whispered. They're actually fighting the Kareth? No one had ever dared to stand against them before. And yet, the humans had come, uninvited, unafraid, and unstoppable. The battle raged for hours. The Kareth had more ships and stronger weapons, but the humans fought differently. They adapted. Their tactics were unpredictable. They sacrificed nothing without purpose. Every maneuver was bold, every risk calculated. When one human ship was destroyed, 2 others closed ranks to protect the survivors. When the Kareth tried to flank them, the humans turned the trap against them. The enemy couldn't understand how a young species could fight with such precision, such heart. Admiral Grant stood firm, giving calm orders even as explosions rocked his ship. "Hold the line," he said. "Every life on that planet depends on us." And the humans did hold the line. Inch by inch, they pushed the Kareth back. The skies, over Vatran Prime, began to clear, revealing the broken beauty of the world below. By the time the last Kareth cruiser fled into hyperspace, the human fleet was damaged but victorious. Fires burned on the decks, alarms echoed through the corridors, and the stars outside were littered with debris. But amidst the silence that followed, humanity had done what no one else dared to do. They had answered the call for help. When the news spread, the galaxy was stunned. The humans, those primitive apes, had defeated a force that had terrorized civilizations for centuries. For the first time in living memory, the Kareth Dominion had retreated. And somewhere, deep in the heart of the galaxy, powerful rulers began to whisper in fear. Humanity had entered the stage. They had chosen their side, and their decision would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The smoke of war still hung over Vatran Prime when the human fleet finally took control of the skies. Fires burned on the planet below, and broken Kareth ships drifted silently in orbit like dark monuments of defeat. For the first time, the galaxy realized that humanity was not a weak or reckless race. They were something far more dangerous, determined. Across hundreds of star systems, news spread like wildfire. Every station, every council, every military command center repeated the same sentence again and again. The humans fought the Kareth, and won. At first, no one believed it. Reports were dismissed as propaganda. How could a species so young defeat one of the galaxy's most feared empires? But the truth could not be denied for long. Videos recorded by witnesses showed human ships moving in perfect formation, firing weapons the galaxy had never seen before. The sight was mesmerizing. Beams of light, rail cannons, and guided missiles tearing through Kareth armor like it was paper. The humans fought like predators that had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. The survivors of Vatran Prime could hardly believe it themselves. They came out from underground shelters, staring at the sky as the last human ship circled above. Soldiers from Earth landed on the surface, not as conquerors, but as rescuers. They handed out food, treated the wounded, and rebuilt communication towers. For the first time, aliens who had never spoken to a human saw their faces up close. They didn't see arrogance or cruelty. They saw compassion and fire in their eyes. The people of Vatran Prime whispered a new name for humanity, the Guardians of the Silent Stars. But peace did not follow. The Kareth Dominion was furious. Their pride had been shattered, their ships destroyed by what they called primitive upstarts. The Dominion Council swore revenge. Massive fleets began to assemble across their territory, their war factories running day and night. The Kareth had underestimated humanity once. They would not make the same mistake again. On Earth, the victory brought both pride and fear. Celebrations filled the streets of every major city. But the leaders of the Alliance knew this was just the beginning. The Kareth would not stop until humanity was crushed. In the war rooms of New Geneva, strategists studied every possible scenario. They knew a storm was coming, one that would decide the future of humankind among the stars. Admiral Elias Grant, the hero of Vatran Prime, returned home only briefly. He looked out at the Earth from his shuttle window, the blue oceans, the green lands, the cities glowing in the dark. He knew that if they failed, all of it could burn. "We've opened a door," he said quietly to his second-in-command. "Now we have to be ready for what walks through it." While the politicians debated and the engineers prepared new defenses, the military trained relentlessly. Thousands of new recruits joined the fleet every day. Inspired by the victory, human shipyards across Mars, Titan, and Europa worked non-stop. They built new warships faster than anyone believed possible, sleek, heavily armed, and equipped with experimental technology. Humanity was learning at a terrifying speed. At the same time, spies and ambassadors from alien civilizations began visiting Earth. Some came with offers of friendship, others with threats wrapped in polite words. Many wanted to understand the humans to see if their victory was luck or power. The Velari Council sent observers who studied human weapons with cold curiosity. The Thalkar, worried about their own dominance, called emergency meetings. Everyone wanted to know what kind of species could defeat the Kareth. They found a simple answer, one that refused to give up. Then, months after the Battle of Veteran Prime, the Kareth returned. Their fleet was 10 times larger than before, an endless sea of ships blotting out the stars. The human colonies on the outer edge of known space were the first to feel the impact. Communication stations went dark one after another. Merchant ships vanished without trace. And then the first human world fell. It was the colony of Avalon, a young and thriving settlement with nearly 4 million people. The Kareth descended upon it like a swarm. The defenders fought bravely, but they were outnumbered. The colony sent one final message before it went silent. They are coming for Earth. When the news reached the Alliance, the shock hit harder than any weapon. The galaxy watched again, expecting humanity to crumble under fear. But that didn't happen. Humanity didn't run. They didn't hide. They prepared. Admiral Grant stood before the fleet assembled at Mars Base Command. The soldiers were silent. Thousands of them, their faces lit by the red glow of the planet below. "We are outnumbered," he said, his voice echoing through the vast hall. "We are outgunned, but we have something they don't understand. We have each other. We fight not for power or territory. We fight because no one else will. And when the Kareth look into the eyes of a human soldier, they will see not fear, but the reflection of their own destruction." The fleet launched again, hundreds of ships breaking orbit and vanishing into the dark. As they traveled through hyperspace, messages of support came from across the colonies. People volunteered to fight. Scientists sent upgrades to ship systems. Even children sent recordings of encouragement, their small voices saying, "Come back safe." Humanity was no longer fighting alone. They were fighting as one. When the fleet emerged from hyperspace near Avalon, they faced the full might of the Kareth Dominion. The alien ships filled every direction, massive in size and number. The human captains looked at their screens in disbelief. The odds were impossible, but Admiral Grant smiled slightly and said, "Good. Let's show them who we are." The battle that followed was beyond imagination. The Kareth unleashed everything they had: planet crackers, plasma storms, and gravitational mines. The humans countered with creativity and precision. Their new ships could outmaneuver heavier enemies. Drones acted as decoys while stealth frigates struck from hidden angles. Artificial intelligence guided the fleet with near-human instinct, predicting enemy movements before they happened. At the center of the chaos, the flagship Sol's Endeavor led the charge. Its rail cannons fired massive projectiles at speeds faster than light, ripping through enemy shields. Fighters darted between capital ships like streaks of silver, dodging fire that lit up the void. The radio channels buzzed with voices shouting orders, prayers, and battle cries. The Kareth commanders couldn't believe what they were seeing. Every time they adapted, the humans changed tactics again. Every time they thought victory was near, a new wave of human ships appeared from unexpected vectors. It was as if the humans were dancing through the chaos, fearless and fierce. Hours turned into a full day of battle. The Kareth fleet began to break. Their commanders screamed in rage, unable to understand how such a young species could fight like this. The humans didn't just use technology, they used imagination, turning every disadvantage into a weapon. Finally, the Kareth flagship was surrounded. Admiral Grant ordered all guns to focus fire. The Endeavor's cannons glowed white-hot as they unleashed one final devastating barrage. The enemy's shields shattered and the great ship exploded in a storm of blue fire. When the explosion faded, silence filled the void. The Kareth fleet began to retreat, leaving behind wreckage and defeat. Humanity had done it again. They had survived the impossible. Across the galaxy, everyone watched in stunned silence. The old powers who had mocked humans now whispered their names with respect and fear. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted forever. On the bridge of Soul's Endeavor, Admiral Grant stood quietly as reports came in. Thousands were dead, but millions were saved. He looked out at the stars where the fires of battle still burned faintly. "We came here as protectors," he said softly. "But today the galaxy will remember us as warriors." And he was right. From that day on, every alien race knew the truth. Humanity was not a race to be underestimated. They were not fragile or naive. They were the storm that rose when all others fell silent. Their courage became legend, and their presence changed the course of galactic history. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The war that began at Vitrin Prime had now spread across half the galaxy. What started as one battle had turned into a storm that no one could stop. The Kareth Dominion, still burning with rage, gathered every ship, every soldier, and every weapon they had to destroy humanity once and for all. Their pride had been wounded deeply. They could not accept that a young, inferior species had defeated them twice. Across their empire, propaganda screamed one message: humanity must be erased, but humanity was ready. They were no longer the newcomers of the stars. They had learned fast, faster than anyone believed possible. Every battle they fought had taught them something new. Every defeat had made them stronger. They built better ships, stronger shields, smarter AIs, and deadlier weapons. But most importantly, they built unity, something the Kareth could never understand. Humans from Earth, Mars, Titan, and the farthest colonies stood side by side. They didn't fight for conquest or glory. They fought for survival, for freedom, and for the promise that no one in the galaxy would ever suffer under tyranny again. Still, the price of war was heavy. Countless soldiers never returned. Cities on human colonies were destroyed. Families waited for news that never came. And yet no one gave up. On every world, workers built ships day and night. Scientists developed new energy systems. Children drew pictures of starships defeating monsters among the stars. Hope had become humanity's greatest weapon. Months passed and the Kareth launched their biggest assault yet. It was called the Purge of the Rim. Thousands of their ships attacked human-controlled systems all at once. Planets burned. Space stations were crushed. Humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction. The galaxy watched, certain that this time the humans would fall. But humanity didn't break. The Earth Alliance called for every fleet to regroup near a place called Hadrian Rift, a dangerous region of space filled with magnetic storms and drifting asteroids. It was a natural trap, and Admiral Elias Grant knew it, but he also knew something else. The Kareth would come for them with everything they had, and he planned to use that arrogance against them. When the Kareth fleets arrived, they found the humans waiting. The rift glowed with strange light, space twisting and trembling around the battle lines. The first shots were fired, and the war entered its most brutal phase. The Kareth outnumbered the humans 3-1. Their ships were larger, their weapons stronger. But the humans had one thing the Kareth did not: strategy born from desperation. The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each using the rift's unstable gravity to move unpredictably. Missiles appeared and vanished between energy storms. Rail cannons fired from hidden positions. The Kareth were furious. Their commanders shouted in confusion as their ships were destroyed one by one. The humans fought like ghosts, striking hard, then disappearing into the magnetic chaos. Admiral Grant's flagship, Soul's Endeavor, stood at the center of the chaos, coordinating every move. His calm voice guided captains spread across light years. "Hold your fire until they're close. Use the storm to hide your signatures. Remember, chaos is our ally." His crew obeyed without hesitation. Every one of them knew this was a fight for their species' survival. As the battle raged on, the Kareth launched their final push. Hundreds of ships moved together in a deadly wave aimed straight at the Endeavor. Alarms blared through the human command ship. The bridge shook violently as explosions lit up the dark. "We're surrounded!" shouted an officer. But Admiral Grant didn't flinch. "Then they've saved us the trouble of chasing them," he replied calmly. "All guns, fire at will." What followed was destruction unlike anything seen before. The humans unleashed every weapon they had. Missiles, plasma rounds, rail slugs, and energy beams. The rift itself seemed to explode with fury, the sky filled with burning debris and dying light. When the smoke cleared, the Kareth wave was gone. Half their fleet destroyed. The rest began to retreat. The victory at Hadrian Rift was more than just a battle won. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity could not be broken. But the cost was terrible. Thousands of human ships were lost. Millions of lives ended in the cold silence of space. And still, Admiral Grant refused to rest. He knew the Kareth would strike again. Soon after came the Battle of Silent Verge. It was fought near the ruins of an ancient alien world. The Kareth tried to use new tactics, attacking from multiple directions, cutting off supply lines and ambushing communication ships. But the humans adapted once more. They had developed a new kind of AI command system called Horizon, capable of coordinating entire fleets faster than any living mind could think. With Horizon guiding them, human ships began moving like a single organism, reacting instantly to every threat. The Kareth didn't understand it. Every trap they set failed. Every plan they made was countered. It was as if the humans could see the future. For the first time, the Kareth commanders began to feel something unfamiliar. Fear. And the fear only grew. Because the humans didn't just fight with machines or numbers, they fought with emotion. Every soldier carried the memories of those lost. Every ship bore the names of fallen heroes. Each battle cry was filled with the voices of billions who refused to bow. But the final test came at Nyrus Reach, a wide expanse of open space where the Kareth assembled their last and greatest fleet. Their goal was simple: destroy humanity completely. When the human fleet arrived, it was smaller, damaged, and tired. The officers knew this could be their last stand. But Admiral Grant gathered his commanders aboard Endeavour for one last speech. "We have fought in the dark," he said. "We have bled among the stars, and yet we are still here. They think this is the end. They are wrong. Today we show the galaxy not what we fight against, but what we fight for." His words filled the soldiers with renewed strength. The battle that followed was beyond imagination. The Kareth fleet stretched across the horizon, their weapons glowing like suns. The humans advanced silent and determined. The first volleys of fire turned the darkness into blinding light. Ships exploded like stars being born and dying in the same breath. The Endeavour was hit several times, shields failing, hull burning. Crew members rushed to keep systems online. "We can't hold much longer," someone shouted. Admiral Grant stood calmly at the command center, eyes fixed on the enemy flagship. "Lock onto their command vessel," he ordered. "All power to the forward guns." The ship's AI warned that the shot could destroy them as well. Grant didn't hesitate. "Do it!" Every cannon on Endeavour fired at once. The railgun round tore through space, glowing red-hot from friction and energy. It struck the Kareth flagship in the center, piercing its core. A massive explosion followed, so bright it lit up entire sectors of space. The Kareth fleet broke formation, leaderless and terrified. The human ships, battered and burning, pressed forward one last time. "Now," Grant shouted, "push them back!" And they did. The humans fought with every ounce of strength they had left. When the dust finally settled, the Kareth fleet was gone. What remained was silence, a silence filled with victory and sorrow. On every channel, the same message was broadcast. It was Admiral Grant's final transmission, recorded moments before his ship lost contact. "You call us a threat because we stand when others bow. Remember this moment, the moment you trembled not from our weapons, but from our will." The words echoed through the galaxy. Every civilization heard them, and they understood. Humanity had proven itself not through power, but through courage and unity. They had shown that willpower could defeat fear, that even the smallest spark could challenge the darkness. The Kareth never recovered from that defeat. Their empire began to collapse under its own weight. Other species that had once feared them now rose up to reclaim their freedom, and all of them looked to humanity with awe and gratitude. The war had changed everything. The galaxy, once ruled by the arrogance of the old empires, was now ruled by respect for the new. Humanity had not only survived, they had become a symbol of hope. And though billions mourned the ones they had lost, they also smiled through their tears. Because they knew that from that day forward, no one would ever again call humanity small. They had faced the endless dark and refused to fall. They had fought the impossible war and won. The war had finally ended, but the galaxy was forever changed. What began as a single human response to a call for help had grown into a conflict that tested the limits of every species, every fleet, and every planet. Humanity had emerged victorious, but victory had not come without cost. Millions of lives were lost across countless systems, fleets were shattered, and entire colonies bore the scars of battle. Yet through all the destruction, one truth became undeniable. Humanity was no longer a young, fragile species. They had entered the galaxy as observers, but they had left as legends. Across the stars, the name human began to spread with a new kind of respect. No longer were humans dismissed as primitive or reckless. Alien empires, both old and young, whispered about them in secret meetings, debated their capabilities in council chambers, and, in some cases, begged for alliances. The Thalkar, who had once considered humanity inconsequential, now sent envoys to understand their technology, their tactics, and the spirit that had allowed them to triumph. The Velari, wise and ancient, sent scholars to study the humans, hoping to learn from the species that had survived what none thought possible. The survivors of the war returned to their worlds to find a galaxy eager to honor their courage. Planets that had once been fearful or indifferent now celebrated humanity. Children painted murals of the battles in the skies, schools taught of human heroism, and songs were written that would echo for generations. For the first time in history, the galaxy saw a species not just surviving, but defining its place among the stars with bravery, compassion, and indomitable will. On Earth, the heroes returned quietly, knowing that celebration was bittersweet. Families who had lost loved ones mourned openly. But there was also pride in the air, a sense of accomplishment that stretched across continents and colonies alike. Cities held parades for the fleets that had returned, with banners and lights filling the streets. But for every smile, there was a shadow of remembrance. Humanity had learned the true cost of war, and the memory of those who had fallen became sacred. Monuments were erected on every major world, honoring the brave souls who had given their lives for a promise of hope and freedom. Yet victory was not just about survival. It was about change. The alien empires that had once ignored humanity began to approach them not with arrogance or dismissal, but with caution and respect. Treaties were rewritten, trade agreements were renegotiated, new alliances were formed. The galaxy had understood a new truth. Humans were not a species to underestimate. They could inspire, unite, and fight with a determination that no one had ever seen before. Admiral Elias Grant, the hero who had led humanity through the war, stood quietly on the bridge of his flagship for one last time. He looked out at the stars, now calm and still after years of relentless conflict. He remembered the battles, the firestorms, the screaming of crew members, and the moments of courage that had defined humanity. He thought of the soldiers who had fallen, the colonies that had burned, and the countless lives that had been changed forever. But he also thought of the survivors, the families saved, and the hope that humanity had inspired across the galaxy. "We've done it," he whispered, not as a boast but as a reflection. "We've truly arrived." The humans themselves did not seek power or dominance after the war. They could have claimed entire star systems, taken control of trade routes, and forced other species into submission. But they chose a different path. They chose to lead with example. They rebuilt worlds, helped other species recover from the devastation of war, and offered protection to those who could not defend themselves. Humanity became known as the Guardians of the Galaxy, a title not given lightly but earned through action and sacrifice. Every victory and every battle had taught humanity a lesson. They learned that strength alone was not enough to survive among the stars. They learned that unity and compassion could achieve what force could not. They learned that even a single species, when guided by determination and moral courage, could change the course of history. And as they rebuilt, they remembered the faces of those who had fallen, the people they had saved, and the countless lives that depended on their courage. The Kareth Dominion, once feared throughout the galaxy, was broken. Its remnants fled into the outer reaches, never to rise to power again. Other species that had once cowered under Kareth rule now reclaimed their freedom, often with the guidance of human fleets and advisors. Humanity had not only survived the war, they had reshaped the galaxy itself. Their presence inspired hope, courage, and resistance. Wherever humans were, civilizations found strength, and wherever humans fought, oppression faltered. Even as peace settled over the stars, Humanity did not rest. Shipyards continued to build. Academies continued to teach, and scientists continued to innovate. The lessons of the war were never forgotten. Every new recruit trained harder. Every new ship was designed smarter. And every new colony prepared not just to survive, but to thrive. Humanity's eye was always on the horizon, ready for any challenge that might emerge from the dark expanse of the galaxy. Stories of the war became legends. Children across human and alien worlds grew up hearing tales of courage and sacrifice. They learned about the battles of Veteran Prime, Hadrian Rift, Silent Verge, and Nyrus Reach. They learned about Admiral Grant's calm leadership, the creativity of human fleet commanders, and the bravery of ordinary soldiers who faced impossible odds without hesitation. Humanity's history became intertwined with the history of the galaxy itself. And yet, despite all the fame and respect, humanity remained humble. They had fought not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. They had learned that true power came not from domination, but from responsibility. They had seen the devastation that war could bring, and they had chosen to use their strength to protect, not to conquer. The galaxy, once quiet and fragile, now trembled, not from fear of destruction, but from the knowledge that humanity had entered the stage. The old empires had been humbled, the weak had been saved, and the young had proven themselves unstoppable. Across countless worlds, species whispered stories of the humans who had stood against impossible odds, who had faced annihilation and emerged victorious, who had taught the galaxy a lesson that no one would ever forget. Courage, unity, and determination could overcome even the greatest darkness. Humanity's victory became a symbol, a promise that no matter how small or young a species might seem, it could rise to meet the greatest challenges. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, not for the weapons they wielded, but for the will they carried. And humanity, in turn, remembered the lessons of the war. They remembered that peace was fragile, that vigilance was necessary, and that their role among the stars was not just to survive, but to protect, inspire, and lead by example. The humans returned to their colonies, their worlds scarred but alive, and began rebuilding. Cities rose from ruins, trade routes reopened, and families reunited. Every corner of the galaxy that had been touched by the war carried the mark of humanity's presence, not as conquerors, but as saviors. Humans taught other species to rebuild, to fight for freedom, and to believe in themselves. Their stories, their bravery, and their compassion became a new standard in the galaxy. For the first time, humans understood their true place in the stars. They were no longer simply a young species exploring unknown worlds. They were a force of change, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, courage and unity could light the way. Across the galaxy, the phrase, "When humanity enters a war, the galaxy trembles," became a truth, repeated by soldiers, historians, and storytellers alike. It was no longer a warning. It was a recognition of the spirit and heart of a species that had refused to be ignored. Admiral Grant, standing one last time on the bridge of Soul's Endeavor, watched as the fleets returned home, each ship a testament to human resilience and determination. He thought of all the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the victories won. He thought of the countless civilizations that had learned to hope again, and the young humans who would one day carry forward the legacy of those who had fought and died. A quiet smile touched his lips as he whispered, "We did not just survive, we changed the stars themselves." And so, humanity entered a new era. The galaxy would never again underestimate them, nor forget the courage and determination that had allowed a young, small species to face impossible odds and emerge victorious. Humanity's story had become legend, a testament to the power of unity, bravery, and the relentless will to protect others. The galaxy trembled, yes, but not in fear alone. It trembled in awe, respect, and recognition of a species that had earned its place among the stars. The war was over, but humanity's journey had only just begun. Their eyes were set on the endless expanse of space where new challenges, new discoveries, and new adventures awaited. The galaxy had seen what humans could do, and it would never forget. From that day forward, wherever humans stood, hope stood with them, and wherever humans fought, the spirit of courage echoed across the stars. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.